Hello, class. Welcome back. Welcome back to school. I want to ask you, how was your summer vacation? How was your summer vacation? Do you know that vacation is said more by Americans in American English? For example, if I was British, I would say holiday. How was your summer holiday? So there is just a fun fact. Vacation versus holiday. Anyway, I hope you had a good vacation and enjoyed a little time off. Let me tell you about second semester. This semester will be more focused on what? On speaking English. Our first goal is to finish our book, A Long Walk to Water. So that will be our first goal. Because this semester is about speaking English, I have some new ideas for this semester and this book. But because our first class is online, we can talk about it next class. Okay? So for today, I want to remember what we read last semester and read the next chapter together. So let's get started. First, where did we stop reading? Do you remember? We stopped reading at chapter 11. In chapter 11, Naya's village was what? Digging and preparing the land to find water. Do you remember the strangers that came to visit? In chapter 11, what happened to Salva? Well, Salva buried Uncle Juir in the desert, and after arriving at the Itang refugee camp, he thought he saw his mother wearing an orange headscarf and ran towards her. That was the end of chapter 11. So, let's continue with chapter 12. Do you have your book? Go get your book. Chapter 12 begins on page 70. So pause the video and get your book. First, I want to talk about some vocabulary. Please repeat the vocabulary along with me, okay? Let's go. First, we have pounded. Pounded. Pounded is to hit heavily and repeatedly. So on page 70 is this sentence. Other villagers, using tools borrowed from the visitors, what? Pounded the rocks to break them up into gravel. Now next, maybe you don't know gravel. Gravel, 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 gravel. Gravel is small pieces of rock. Let's read this together. Other villagers, using tools borrowed from the visitors, pounded the rocks to break them up into gravel. Gravel. Good. Next, this is a little rare word, is clangor. 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 Clangor is very loud and noisy sounds. The clangor, let's read this together. The clangor of machinery and hammer greeted Naya each time she returned from the pond. So, clangor. Next, we have a fun word, skittered. 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 Skittered is to move lightly and quickly or hurriedly. So, in a hurry. In this sentence, More skittered means hurriedly, hurriedly. The rumors, again, read with me. The rumors skittered around the camp. Skittered. Next, we have chaos. Chaos, chaos, chaos. Chaos is confusion and panic, yes. Together, immediately, there was chaos. Here is a picture. Here is order. Everything is orderly. And then, of course, this is chaos. Good. And finally, we have the word stampede. 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 A stampede is a panicked group running together, often animals, but it can be people too. It was if the people ceased to be people and instead became an enormous herd of panicked, stampeding, two-legged creatures. Stampede. Stampede. Okay, so that is our vocabulary for this chapter. Now let's read chapter 12 together. Now I want you to follow along and read pages 70, 72, and 74 aloud with me. So read 72, read 70, 72, and 74 aloud. Speak the words with me. Okay, follow along in your book. Chapter 12, Southern Sudan, 2009. An iron giraffe. A red giraffe that made very loud noises. The giraffe was a tall drill that had been brought to the village by the two men who had visited earlier. They had returned with a crew of 10 more men and 2 trucks, one hauling the giraffe drill along with the other mysterious equipment, and the other loaded with plastic pipe. Meanwhile, the land was still being cleared. Naya's mother tied the baby on her back and walked with several other women to a place between the village and the pond. They collected piles of rocks and stones and tied them up into bundles using sturdy cloth. They balanced the bundles on their heads, walked back to the drilling site, and emptied the rocks onto the ground. Other villagers using tools borrowed from the visitors pounded the rocks to break them up into gravel. Many loads of gravel would be needed. Naya didn't know why. The piles of gravel grew larger each day. The clangor of machinery and hammer greeted Naya each time she returned from the pond. Unfamiliar noises that mingled with the voices of men shouting and women singing. It was the sound of people working hard together. But it did not sound at all like water. Etang Refugee Camp, Ethiopia, 1985. Mother, mother, please! Salva opened his mouth to call out again, but the words did not come. Instead, he closed his mouth, lowered his head, and turned away. The woman in the orange headscarf was not his mother. He knew this for certain, even though she was still far away and he had not seen her face. Uncle's words came back to him. The village of Lun Arik was attacked, burned. Few people survived. No one knows where they are now. In the moment before calling out to the woman a second time, Salva realized what Uncle had truly meant. Something Salva had known in his heart for a long time. His family was gone. They had been killed by bullets or bombs, starvation or sickness. It did not matter how. What mattered was that Salva was on his own now. He felt as though he were standing on the edge of a giant hole, a hole filled with the black despair of nothingness. I am alone now. I am all that is left of my family. His father, who had sent Salva to school, brought him treats like mangoes, trusted him to take care of the herd. His mother, always ready with food and milk and a soft hand to stroke Salva's head. His brothers and sisters, whom he had laughed with and played with and looked after. He would never see them again. How can I go on without them? But how can I not go on? They would want me to survive, to grow up and make something of my life, to honor their memories. What was it Uncle had said during the first terrible day in the desert? Do you see that group of bushes? You need only to walk as far as those bushes. Uncle had helped him get through the desert that way, bit by bit, one step at a time. Perhaps Salva could get through life at the camp in the same way. I need only to get through the rest of this day, he told himself. This day and no other. If someone had told Salva that he would live in the camp for 6 years, he would never have believed it. 6 years later, July 1991. They are going to close the camp. Everyone will have to leave. That's impossible. Where will we go? That's what they're saying. Not just this camp. All of them. The rumors skittered around the camp. Everyone was uneasy. As the days went by, the uneasiness grew into fear. Salva was almost 17 years old now, a young man. He tried to learn what he could about the rumors by talking to the aid workers in the camp. They told him that the Ethiopian government was near collapse. The refugee camps were run by foreign aid groups, but it was the government that permitted them to operate. If the government fell, what would the new rulers do about the camps? When that question was answered, no one was ready. One rainy morning, as Salva walked toward the school tent, long lines of trucks were arriving. Masses of armed soldiers poured out of the trucks and ordered everyone to leave. The orders were not just to leave the camp, but to leave Ethiopia. Immediately there was chaos. It was as if the people ceased to be people and instead became an enormous herd of panicked, stampeding, two-legged creatures. Salva was caught up in the surge. His feet barely touched the ground as he was swept along by the crowd of thousands of people running and screaming. The rain, which was falling in torrents, added to the uproar. The soldiers fired their guns into the air and chased the people away from the camp. But once they were beyond the area surrounding the camp, the soldiers continued to drive them onward, shouting and shooting. As he dashed ahead, Salva heard snatches of talk. The river. They're chasing us toward the river. Salva knew which river they meant. The Gyeongju River, which was along the border between Ethiopia and Sudan. They are driving us back to Sudan, Salva thought. They will force us to cross the river. It was the rainy season. Swollen by the rains, the Gila's current would be merciless. The Gilo was well known for something else too: crocodiles. Okay, did you read page 70, 72, and 74 with me? If not, please read these aloud on your own. Okay. Good job with chapter 12. Oh, poor Salva at the camp. Can you believe Salva was at the camp for 6 years? Let's see what happens to him next. Okay, shall we summarize chapter 12? Please write the summary in your notebook, okay? So get your notebook, and here is your summary for chapter 12. Here's your summary for Naya. There was a very tall drill. What did Naya call this? She called it an iron giraffe. And gravel and pounded. And then here is the chapter summary for Salva. Salva first is at the Itang refugee camp for 6 years. But then 6 years later, he has a disaster. So please write these in your notebook. Okay, that is the introduction and the beginning to our new semester. Finally, if you want to review the book more before next week, you can do the word search linked in Band. So there's a little word search I made to help you remember and to jog your memory about A Long Walk to Water. Next week, bring your book, paper, and pencil to class. Okay? Okay, don't forget book, paper, and pencil. Thank you so much. I will see you in class. Have a good week. I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye. Goodbye.